Welcome to Half Hearted. My guest today is Daniel Woodrow. I did a little bit of background on you, which is like you've done Just for Laughs. You're on CBC Gem, Roast Battle Canada, and I feel like if you watch like any amount of Canadian cable, they'll see you like once in a while.
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah, like a lot more so in the past.
Yeah.
Definitely auditioned for more TV stuff now, but yeah, I've had my good run of commercials. A lot of those.
Yeah. Well, I did commercials for like a year while trying to maintain like an actual day job.
Yeah,
and I had
so many auditions.
I had to quit. I had to stop it because it was like I have a 9 to 5, and so when it was like coming out of the pandemic, like there were a lot of like virtual auditions, and that I could manage. But then as soon as that was over, I want to say like just over maybe last summer, it started to be in-person auditions again. So I'm like leaving the office to go do in-person auditions. I'm like, I'm gonna get fired if I keep doing this.
It's like it's the worst system. I swear they actually think that actors are just sitting at home like NPCs, just waiting for an audition, like with no other activities to do and no daily life. They're like, oh, audition, okay, perfect.
Absolutely. Like I would say, like I enjoyed doing them. They're fun, but I would say it's a very inconsiderate industry.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, is that fair to say?
Yeah,
in your experience, like you get there we want you here at noon, so we can get you fitted through wardrobe, and then so you can sit for 3 hours doing nothing.
Yeah, and then it's like even when it comes to like larger auditions, it's just like, oh yeah, memorize 4 pages this weekend for Monday, and then you might get another audition too, or like you never at the same time, or you just never hear back, and after a while you're like, oh yeah, this is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Wait for that like one big thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of work because what I don't think a lot of people realize about, especially doing commercials and stuff, or even in Canada, like non-union projects, is like you have to do self-tapes. So you've got to record yourself doing like, a certain amount of dialogue, acting it out. Maybe like I got to rope my wife into doing stuff, things with me. And then you've got to edit them. And I don't know about you, when you were doing it, I had to do I was doing like 15 a week.
Yeah, I just do it on my phone now, like the iMovie styles. Like, but yeah, I know it's sometimes like now I'll have more like 3 or 4 auditions a week. But yeah, there was times it was insane. I'm happy it's self-tapes now, and and a lot of pre-recorded auditions, because going to like in the middle of the day, having to go all the way to the East End to this audition, and then sometimes I'd have another audition in the same place, but it's like 6 hours later. So it's like, do you go home? Do you hang around? Like, it's kind of, that was really difficult to manage.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to do that once where I had to do an audition with my daughter for one. And then, 2 hours later, I was back at the same place. It's like, what do I do in that time?
Yeah, exactly.
And I didn't even get it. And if I had gotten that one, I would have got a free trip to the Dominican.
Oh man, I haven't booked one of those that sends you to some tropical place.
I know, right?
I was close. I think I was on hold for one that shot in Mexico for like a week or something, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be sick.
It's always interesting when you're watching TV and you'll see a commercial that you like put in a tape for or auditioned for, and be like, oh, they chose him again. yeah,
exactly. You're like, oh yeah, or you're like, who is that? I've never seen them before.
Yeah. Do you find what is your like nervousness level, or like how do you feel about doing commercials? Because I find like having done comedy that I don't find like those auditions to be all that.
Oh no, the auditions are not like exciting and fun in any way.
No,
especially doing the self tapes now. It's just so weird because you're at home, you don't get any feedback. You can't even like read people's faces to see if you did well or not.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, and the Zoom auditions are even worse. Like I did a Zoom audition, what was it, last week or the week before, for like, I think it was like a larger role in a TV show, some like Apple TV show or something. And then I was just so nervous when the Zoom came, because it's like doing the Zoom audition, you're ready to go, you're standing looking at the waiting screen. You know the waiting screen.
Yeah.
Like the host is
we've let them know you're here.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, my time has come. Still nothing, and you're just standing there waiting, and you're waiting. 5 minutes goes by, 6 minutes goes by, 7 minutes goes by. You're like, okay. Then you're like a little less ready, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like, I think for this one it was like 15 minutes later or something, and I was like, and then all of a sudden they just pop on and they're like, okay, are you ready? And you're like,
I was.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things, it's like you have to sit there in like a mental place for like 15 minutes, but also it's just the waiting room with no indication of how many minutes it takes. You're just like, if I even go to the bathroom or get some water, I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah, you're afraid to mess up. I just find more what in the sense of what I was thinking is like doing an audition with a script that you didn't write, like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue in front of 4 people really is nothing compared to like trying to be funny for 10 minutes in front of 40 people.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's way easier to be funny doing stand-up for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like your words. I just find also commercials are just straight up cheesy.
Yeah, there's
especially auditions.
There's no way to like add any edge to that at all.
Because a lot of times there's not really room to improvise in these commercials. Like the time is so tight and every word is planned and passed by lawyers. And like there's a few commercials they've asked me to just like riff some stuff, but it doesn't happen very often. So.
It's tough. I find but they ask for it sometimes. A lot of the roles will call for somebody with comedic background or something like that.
Skills and all that, yeah.
I think I did get the first commercial I did was for Casper mattresses, and I did an improv where like I had a stack of Christmas presents, and I'm greeting people at the front door, and I think I tried to like hold it up with my knee while I went for a handshake, and they thought that was really funny. And that's what I think got it for me was being able to do that.
It is like that in commercials. It's like one little thing you do in the audition that they're like, oh, I think that's a good idea. And then they book you.
Yeah. Well, okay. That was a cool little segue. I just, I really want to thank you for coming because like, we don't know each other at all.
No,
we've never met before.
No.
Right. We know a lot of the same people. And you're one of the very few, I think, in like the Toronto scene who I've never crossed paths with.
Yeah, I agree. And like I actually had seen your some of the clips on your Instagram with Chris Robinson or whatever, talking about his past and stuff. And I thought that was really cool that you got him on to talk about it, and the podcast quality looked good and everything. So.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I said I got a follow out of it, which I was really stoked about. And well, you were one of the people. So I had run this idea by our mutual friend Courtney Gilmore, which was the fact. So you don't know about me. So I had been evangelical for like the last 20 years, like literally right up until the pandemic.
Okay, wow.
And then I got into comedy, and I noticed right away that like everybody has some kind of like a faith background, and that's something that I actually have some knowledge about, and it seemed like a cool little niche to kind of explore. And people seem really like excited to talk about it because I don't think that there is a space to kind of talk about your past. Like I'm not talking about people who are like angry atheists and stuff like that, but just like this is like where I come from.
Yeah,
you know, this has shaped who I am.
100%.
You know, and like this is what I thought at the time. This is how I kind of changed. This is where I am now. Like I don't know. I love talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time avoiding talking about it, so I find that this is a good way to like actually talk about it.
Do you talk about your background on stage at all?
Not really, actually.
No, see, so I'm afraid to as well.
I don't. Yeah, not the religious stuff. I actually don't. I'm not sure why. I feel like I don't know. I felt like I was working through it myself to figure out how I feel about it. But I think like I'm gonna record an album soon, and that's more about family and like my like growing up and stuff. But then I think the next one is going to be focused more on maybe religion.
Okay. How long do you think it would take you to write that? Like if you were going for 45, how long do you think that would take you?
Sometime, yeah.
Okay, so we don't know each other, so maybe let's just start with like, so who is this person in front of me? Like if you were to give me if you're meeting somebody for the first time, like tell me about yourself, and then we can, talk about.
I'm Daniel Woodrow. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been doing it for 12 or 14 years, and I started out in Ottawa, and then I moved to Toronto and pursued it here ever since. I do acting as well, and produce my own comedy shows. Co-produce a yearly tour that we're starting in February. It starts actually next week, and we tour like Toronto, Ottawa, Halifax, Montreal, Vancouver this year. So yeah, that keeps me pretty busy, and that's pretty much a summary of my professional self.
Okay, that's cool. Did you do the Humber program?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But I did drop out.
I feel like every time I say that to people scoff.
Well, it's just because it's like one of those things that when you talk about later, you're like, it doesn't matter. Like, it has nothing to do with what I do now. Perhaps it does, because I guess in a way I owe it some credit, because I don't think I would have really necessarily moved from Ottawa to Toronto if there wasn't like a base, which would have been going to Humber for comedy.
Yes, okay.
But then after I realized like all the different elements you pay for and how these exact same teachers also work at Second City and all these places you can also pay for courses at right now to go to. I was like, maybe I don't need to pay for the. Oh, sorry.
That's you just leave it. And that water's for you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, apparently. And then I was like, well, I could just do these classes separately if I was interested in them, or just pursue stand up over like I was living in residence at the time and all that stuff, which is too expensive.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting you say that, because I started doing these courses with this guy named Jerry Corley, who's another guy I've had. He used to work for the Tonight Show, and he like wrote a book on comedy, and so I did courses with him, and then I like was comparing notes with a friend of mine who did Second City, and he was just like, they don't teach us any of this stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like so Jerry Corley's book has like real like formulas, like how to write a three-way build, how to do incongruity, like where you're working between two things, or how to write a misdirection joke or things like that, like really specific, like what are the laugh triggers and structures and things like that, like really like needles down. And so when I first started, it was incredibly valuable to just learn how to write a joke. Right.
We had Larry Horowitz as a teacher, and he taught us, God bless his soul, how to cook salmon in a coffee pot when you're on the road, and also that the most important thing you can bring to a gig with you is a sharpened pencil and a piece of tape, so that you can take notes and then fix the mic stand if it breaks. The tape thing I'll give him, but teaching me how to make coffee, how to make salmon in a coffee pot was one of the main reasons why I dropped out of Humber.
Is this the same guy that also, because I heard,
yes,
I think it was Juliana Rodriguez also told me a story about a professor. This might be the same person, on how to cook an egg on a light bulb.
Oh, it must
with
be.
foil.
It surely must be.
Yeah,
I doubt that's in the curriculum twice at Humber.
Well, it's got to be demoralizing when like you go to college to learn how to be a comic, and he teaches you how to be homeless.
Yeah, they like teach you how to survive in motels. You're like, first of all, there's Airbnbs. Well, I guess there wasn't at the time. Yeah, but I'm just like, first of all, I don't want to be a road dog. Yeah, I don't want to be just breaking even by cooking salmon in a coffee pot. Also, many other dinner options, but I respect that. I don't think that's sanitary or will cook your salmon enough.
Well, this is a question that I wanted to pose towards the end, but since we're at it now, like, what do you, because you've been doing it a while, how do you find doing stand-up in Canada? It seems like it's difficult to make your living doing it.
I just wish Canada was less spread out so that you can go between, like, some comics do it right, and they'll travel a lot and they'll tour a lot, like 2-3 times a year, and go from like town to town and build like an audience in these places. But that you have to do manually, and it takes so long, and it's so far apart. Like if you're driving, you're in a car for 12 hours between cities. If you're flying, there goes your budget. So it's like really tricky to. Like, it would be a lot better if there was more major cities closer together, or just more of, like, kind of people that go see entertainment in these places. Like, it's just a lot harder to reach out and be like, come to this thing we're doing, or it's hard to make it worth it. So,
yeah, like, I did a show in Trenton, like, 2 weeks ago now, I want to say, and it was great, but it was, like, at a small kind of restaurant. It was like tops like 40 people. We did 2 shows, and we didn't get home till like 3 a.m.
Yeah, and it's like so much driving, and then you're like, was that worth my like? I love doing stand up. I don't think I would ever stop, even if even if it was just as a hobby. It's just like, yeah, there's certain things at a certain time where you're like, okay, maybe this isn't worth the amount of hours it takes me to go there and back,
It's nice to know I have, like, other people have had that thought. Like, you feel like you're being a quitter for not enduring these terrible conditions.
Yeah, I know. And I think that a lot of people would respectfully feel that way, because they would love to have a gig like that. But I guess there's a certain point where you're like, oh yeah, maybe being in a car for 6 hours for $200 doesn't equal out that great.
Well, and it seems as though like you're kind of in the avenue of a lot of comics who are at the what I would call the top of the hierarchy in the sense of like,
Thanks.
well, no, but
I guess so. To be
yeah,
fair,
but
yeah.
I mean, like you're a professional, you're a headliner,
Mhm.
you don't have a day job as far as I
No.
know, right? Like that's you're
Yeah.
doing it, right? But it seems as though in order to do it, you need like multiple revenue streams.
Yeah, I mean, producing my own monthly event really helps. At
Okay.
least give some sort of control to your income. I also started a business during the pandemic with another comedian, Rodney Ramsey, in Montreal, which was just producing live events over Zoom,
Okay.
and then it moved to us selling it to corporates, like to companies and stuff like that, and then now we're just focusing like on this month. We produced this February tour together. We've been doing it for like 12 years, but
Mm.
now we're focusing on kind of expanding that brand and bringing it throughout the year, and so that keeps me busy and brings in some income as well, and then stand up and acting and all that. So
Yeah.
it's like it's nice to have control of that, but it would also be, I don't know, I don't think I would like to only just do stand up and then sit around all day, play video games, then go get ready for another show. Like I
Yeah.
think that would get old to me. I would need to do acting or have my own sort of thing going, I think,
Hmm.
a little bit.
Yeah, it seems as though that you need like hence the podcast, like you
Yeah.
need to develop your own thing
Yeah,
to
yeah,
really
exactly.
kind of make a go of it. Do you have a mind to go to the States?
Yeah, I'm figuring that out now. I guess hopefully in the next year I'll have a visa.
Okay.
Um, I'm working on that process now. I just don't know what the plan is or where I want to go. I'm trying to figure that all out kind of
Mm.
now. But yeah, that seems to be the plan. Maybe probably New York.
Around when you first started comedy, like what were your goals?
To make a living out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't really like. I always wanted to be an actor more than anything.
Okay.
And then when I kind of found stand up, I really, really enjoyed that. Like it helped bring me out of my shell. I guess my goals were to make a living off of it and just like be not necessarily like a household name, but someone that could like I could just book a tour and then they would sell out. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I don't think the goals are too unattainable now, but things have shifted so much since I first started. Like now it's all about social media and like
Hmm.
you can blow up on social media and then also do that same thing. So is it like about grinding each show every night now or how has the game changed? Is like
Hmm.
kind of the questions I have. So I think for me it would be to be able to like do more and do bigger shows, like raise my name a bit more in my profile and yeah, be able to like expand it to the States. But I don't know what the overall goal is, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the big picture is.
Is it tough in the sense of like you've kind of attained the things that you wanted to do at the beginning?
Somewhat. A lot of my goals in Canada have been attained, or at least one time. Like I'd like to
Hmm.
do more of those things more often. But I do see like where if I move to the States, it will kind of put me back at the beginning again, and I'll have to grind all over again, which could be good for me.
Yeah.
Like at least there'll be. I already know a lot of people down there, but you have to pretty much start again. So.
Yes. Yeah. That's what it seems like. You need to get the credits here or you need to get to the top here in order to get the credits you need to get to the States.
I'm also just finding there's like not a ton of shows right now. Like it's harder to like work on new material all the time. I just find Comedy Bar has a bunch of shows. There's not a lot of independently produced shows anymore.
How has the scene changed in your opinion, like pre and post pandemic?
A lot. I think that before the pandemic, there was a lot of people running their own shows in different venues around the city. There was like a lot more going towards promoting and kind of like expanding their brand, like the producers. And now during the pandemic, I feel a lot of people stopped, or a lot of bars stopped hosting those
Mm.
shows. A lot of those venues closed. So now it's just like people after the pandemic started producing again. They were a lot newer. All went to Comedy Bar, and Comedy Bar had such a flood of new people coming and buying tickets right after the pandemic. So every show would sell out every
Hmm.
night, no matter what. And all these producers were like, "Oh, this is so easy," And then
Yeah.
it became harder and there's a lot less shows. And I just feel like we're in a weird spot where people aren't even daring to produce outside a comedy bar.
Hmm.
And if they are, it's very few. And there's just like, I just feel like even shows in the GTA and these one nighters, there's not as many anymore. I don't know. Just feels kind of different. I don't know if it's going to come back or.
Yeah, that's because so I started towards the very end of it. Like I was there at like the reboot, so I never really had any experience with what it was like before. But
I mean, audience-wise, it's the same. I'm talking about from like a
oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's about the same. I'm talking more from a production standpoint.
Do you find the crowds are still coming out? Because that's the impression I get, is that it's almost like the city's still kind of warming up years later.
I just felt like I used to be able to predict what the audience was going to be like. Like I used to be like, okay, it's pretty good weather today. Yeah, you know, it's February. It'll probably be a pretty good turnout because people are like outside. Now I just literally don't know how people are feeling or what they're doing. It used to be like my show's an 11 o'clock show that I do monthly. It used to be people would come, finish the show, and go out and party and drink. Now it's like almost half the audience is sober, or they're like not really super drinking, and they're just there for that's their activity for the night, and then they're just going home. Like that is one change I've noticed. A lot like of that party atmosphere has gone a bit, and other than that, though, I think the audiences are about the same. They just seem very depressed, but and just unpredictable. Sometimes they're just like this holiday. I felt like the city was so dead and so quiet. I've never seen it quite that quiet since the pandemic.
It seemed like every December in particular, everyone was sad.
Oh yeah,
is it really like not just me?
I noticed that too. And the audiences even now, like the last couple of shows I've hosted, and you're like, what is up with these guys? There's no energy. Like, how are you guys doing? They're like, yeah. You're like, oh man.
Oh, that was so. When I was in Trenton, like the 8 o'clock show, great audience, pumped, just like a great show. The ones that you like live to do, and then the second show, you know, first joke that usually pops, they're like, huh, and you're like, you know, in that first split second, like the road that you have ahead of you for however much. And it's tough.
It's like I think what it is like people during the pandemic got a break from their jobs and like what they're stuck doing, and started to probably go in towards the things that they enjoy doing, their hobbies. Like you started stand up, podcast, and like a lot of people did that. Then everything came back, and their job, they have to go back to their original jobs, and like maybe lost track of these hobbies and activities and stuff, and then. I think it's the moment that's kind of hitting now, maybe a year and a bit after the pandemic, is like, oh, I'm stuck again doing stuff that isn't for me.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of feel like the world was going nice and slow, and I got adjusted to that speed, and now everything seems like rapid fire and so fast, and I don't have time for myself. And
it's like we're back, but now we have to go back to doing all the stuff we used to do, but it costs twice as much now.
Oh, that's the biggest, and I honestly think that's probably the thing making everyone depressed. Like, just doing groceries alone is like unbelievable. I swear it's double the price than before the pandemic.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I come home with like, did I forget a bag? Like, it's the weirdest feeling now.
Yeah, because having kids and stuff are always,
man.
You know, like I'm buying. It used to be like 2 pints of raspberries $5, right? And now it's the same one. Like one of those is $8.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. Like,
and it's like on the things that should like, I understand about raising. I mean, inflation is inflation. It's not like the grocery store necessarily controls it, but it's like essential items shouldn't be the items that are like first affected, like vegetables and fruits and like, but obviously that's what it's going to be. But it's like the worst when it's like, there's families that it's probably the difference between them not really having food security and having food security, like this amount of inflation. Yeah, if you just work like a couple that works a minimum wage job and you have a kid, which is already an impossible situation for Toronto.
Yeah.
Now it's even worse. You can't even.
Yeah, it's on the edge, and then you want to be in Toronto.
Yeah. Having a job and also food insecurity is like you could be like a solo person with a job, a minimum wage job, and probably have food insecurity.
Yeah, I think I saw a headline about like people in the military are like sleeping in their cars, right? Like,
yeah,
it's the most secure job.
Yeah, right. I don't know. It's that inflation's getting a little bit scary with that when it comes to groceries, because I'm pretty like I can cook and I can like when you can cook, you can buy plain ingredients. You don't have to like buy everything prepackaged. It's a little cheaper. Even that is you're just like, what is this? Like, how do I think about it all the time with people with kids? Like you would have to change your lifestyle at a certain point.
Oh yeah, it's so crazy. I think it's leading to why people are flooding out of Ontario to go to like the East Coast, where it's cheaper. But then like
for now,
but then they don't have enough doctors. Like they can't keep the places that we're going can't keep up with the amount of people coming in.
And is the food cost like the same, or is it lower in different provinces? Like
it's the same or worse, because I think it depends on where it's shipped from.
Vancouver is bad. Vancouver is so expensive.
Yeah, Vancouver's bad. I feel like it's everywhere because it's hard to get food.
It's just like the discount grocery stores are now the price that like Whole Foods was before.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, we're just having like such a niche conversation. I was talking about like Longos used to be expensive, and now I feel like their prices hasn't really gone up because they were already inflated, and so now it's
it's just the same.
So now that theirs is like the same, but now everybody else's is just as expensive.
The secret.
Well, yeah, I mean, for like produce and meat, Longos is worth it.
I started doing this new thing now because I know this is niche. No Frills, discount grocery store in Toronto. You can like, it's owned by PC now.
Yes.
So you can order your groceries online and then pick them up in their little like storage containers in the front. I started doing that, and it's made life a lot easier in a way because I just get like insanely aggravated in grocery stores.
Yeah, it's just the only thing about that is I actually did like a sketch, a video about grocery pickups where it's like, you go get the milk, you go get the cereal, I'll go get the worst produce we have.
Yeah, I know. They do. I'm like, why would you give me a vine of like tomatoes that aren't going to be ready for a week? Like,
yeah, if you leave them to pick the produce, they will give you the worst ones.
But I started wondering if I've been picking produce wrong this whole time. If anyone knows how to pick produce, it should be them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like maybe it's funny you say that. I was thinking about that today. I was like, maybe that's why I do this wrong. I'm buying groceries that are ripe right now. Like when I go and buy bananas, I buy bananas that are ready to eat today.
Yes.
But I remember my parents would buy bananas and it would always annoy me. They wouldn't be ready for a couple days.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't be like you have a longer time to use them because you go from the start of the ripe cycle to the end instead of just like halfway through.
No, I feel like it's the opposite. They give you like the rotten shit.
Oh, for me, I always get the it's like I got avocados. I had to sit on those for a while. Like,
oh no, I'm talking about like
you get rotten.
Yeah, I'll get like apples. They all have spots on them, or like bananas that were like you should have thrown out yesterday.
That would have been a problem.
Yeah, like these bananas are perfect for banana bread.
But they're not doing delivery, so I can probably still complain to their face at least when I go pick it up.
Yeah, like we'll do the grocery pickup at Loblaws, but you just sit in the back and they put it in your car, and then you get home, and then you're like, what did they give us? So so now you got to be choosy with what.
Maybe I won't do the produce anymore. It just saves me a lot. I find like it's easier to, because I'm at home thinking about what I need anyway. So it's just as easy to put in the order that way. And then I don't know. I just find like the lights are really bright in there. Slow walkers, old people,
like
couples.
The lights complain to this.
I don't. It's like I think I'm gonna get tested for autism. Because like
the amount of people on this podcast who are like, I think,
because the thing about social media now has been diagnosing me with so many things. Because it's like, you'll see these channels and people talk about having autism or ADHD or something, and you're like, holy fuck, I relate to this.
Yeah. And then, ADHD for sure.
That was when I think social media taught me I have ADHD, which was later confirmed by my therapist, but. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things where you're like, oh, I do that. And I thought that was just a niche thing that I do. And then you start to see all the patterns, right? So then, but there's certain things that I'm like, I could possibly be autistic. It would actually explain my childhood a lot more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I find like, you'll see one of those videos and be like, I thought I was the only one that would find a song on Spotify and listen for like 100 times in a week and then never listen to it again.
I used to do that too. And I don't really listen to music like that anymore, but I think it's because the available music we have is so much more. Mm-hmm. Like I'll do this. I'll make a playlist on Spotify and then I'll listen to those songs for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So it is like kind of like I'm listening to the same songs over and over, but it might be the same 15 songs.
I
So
have
it's just like whatever I'm feeling that week, I save to a playlist. Then I just listen to that playlist for a while until I'm bored.
That's good. Yeah, I guess that I have like a 500 song, like all my liked songs.
Yeah, and then
I
play
just
those.
listen to that all the time.
That's not
but
bad.
I'm always like throwing ones in, and then I'll be like, yeah, why is this one in here?
Actually, that's a good idea to just do like songs. I guess because I like to have different genres for my moods, but so you can go back later. But that is true. Just play the like songs because then there's a lot more to shuffle through.
Yeah, and then you can skip them if you don't like them and keep cycling them in and out. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in here was you started in Christian comedy.
Yes. I did.
So because that's where I come from, but I never even considered doing Christian comedy.
Okay. I was gonna say, okay, yeah. No, I mean, I didn't know what comedy was when I started.
Okay.
Like I'm the least. I was not a well, I shouldn't say that, but I didn't see live comedy before I started. I've never
okay.
And even when I started, because I was in, well, I guess I should explain. So when I started comedy, I was going to church on a regular basis, and then I'd go to youth group. And I remember one night I had a dream where there was just like, I don't know what I was doing. It was kind of like hazy, but I was on stage and there was a really bright spotlight on me. And, you know, which is funny because I didn't know at the time, but you know, when the spotlight is on you, you can't see the audience at all. It was that exact vibe. And it was like I just finished a performance, was walking off stage. I had no idea what it was. No clue. I actually had told the youth pastor about this, and then he's like, hey, maybe you're doing comedy. You're a pretty funny guy. And I was like, weird. Yeah, I doubt it. But it's like, well, and he's funny because he's kind of such an impulsive guy, but he was just like, yeah, why don't you just come and like do the announcements next week and just like make them funny?
Oh,
and I was like, okay. And then I wrote jokes. Like, I didn't plan. Like, I think I just wrote stand-up books because stand-up jokes and not anything to do with the announcements. Because I do remember I had been listening to comedy albums a lot.
Okay.
And I guess I would probably download them at the time. I don't know. But I would listen to like Jim Gaffigan, like all of Louis C.K.'s old ones, and like David Cross and like people like that, which is actually pretty funny. I was listening to David Cross and doing Christian comedy. I don't know if you've ever heard David Cross's.
No, I don't think so.
Raging Atheist.
Oh yeah, okay, fair.
But so then like I did like probably like 2 or 3 minutes. I have no idea. Super offensive jokes somehow. Racist. One was about like this guy in the Bible, I think Abraham or something, that had a bunch of wives. I can't remember.
What kind of church did you go to?
They say non-denominational, but it was Pentecostal.
Okay.
They just said non-denominational, so it sounded more open, but it was the shaking and the floor and weirdos.
Okay, speaking in tongues. Yeah. That's interesting. I also there's a few.
I was also a shaking on the floor weirdo at one point.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. I was it's brainwashing. So.
Well, okay. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk?
So.
Well,
I don't normally because I've just never really I never really wanted to connect that side with comedy. But then so many times in interviews, I get asked how I started comedy, and I would make up some random story, or like I'd say a different version. And then when I would be in Ottawa doing interviews, I'd tell the real story because people know me there.
Oh, okay. So there's no way.
I kind of just never really talked to it because I don't want to like offend the people that I know from my past or like my family. My parents are still really religious and like stuff like that. But it's my life, my story. So
there was like a few things you said that I wanted to talk about. Like I love the concept of dreams. Like the year before I started doing comedy, I had a dream about doing comedy, and then somebody handed me a thing of money, and I was like, "What?" And
in the dream,
yeah. And I didn't really have a mind at that time to start it. I had been depressed like a year going into the pandemic, and then I almost got fired from my job, and that made it even worse. And I was like trying to think of like something else I could do, and I thought about like even like starting like a vehicle wrapping business. Like I thought about like anything.
To
that's
what the pandemic did for people.
Yeah. And then I don't know at what point it will. Oh yeah, that's right. I watched that Jim Carrey documentary. Have you seen it? The Jim and Andy one?
Oh yeah.
Where he says like, I learned that you can fail at what you don't love, so you might as well do what you love. And like I had said, I wanted to be a comic when I was like 8. I actually like got into university for theater, but then went to Bible college instead because I wasn't raised evangelical.
Oh, you weren't?
No. So I did 10 grams of magic mushrooms when I was 17. And that was like the start of my journey.
Oh, wow.
So
oh, my
like,
goodness.
I have like a big like God encounter. And then
you went a generic like religious route with it.
I think it was more like I started to just do research on like, if I have an experience with God, well, like which God is it? Who is this God that I met?
And so did you kind of just go to church to just see how you
No,
felt,
I started doing research first. I started like becoming like a praying person.
I've never really heard of somebody taking that route before. I'm sure that's very common, but
I actually like I was the guy who at every single youth event or when I was in Bible college, like everybody wanted me to say my testimony. Everybody.
Oh,
like,
yeah. They love exploiting those stories.
Oh, they love
especially if you were like a drug addict or maybe sexually abused and you'll say it out loud. Oh, they love that. They make you say, I remember hearing, they played this kid's video in church so much. This guy used to be a drug addict and like drug dealer and became Christian. They would just show you the YouTube video and you're like, what? Why are you showing me this? I'm already Christian.
Yeah, right. Like
it's so confusing.
Yeah, they loved for me to talk about it because I became a Christian. Essentially, like I just did research on which God I thought it was, and it was more like, well, Buddhism doesn't have a God. I didn't think that like Hinduism and Islam seemed too tied to like physical places.
Yeah.
Right. And then it was more like, well, if the God is the God of the universe, he's bigger than like Mecca or India or something like that. I feel like that God would be more universal. And then like I couldn't look into Judaism without looking at Jesus, and it was more like Jesus was the one that seemed to most represent that of love, that experience of love that I experienced.
Right.
That was where I found it, and then I went to church on my own, and it was like that's when I met like all the guys that ended up in my wedding party. Like I met on the first day I went to church voluntarily. Whoa. But yeah, I would tell they loved it when I would say my testimony because like I became a Christian before I went to church.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and
I've never really heard of that before. I think like for me, I was just born into it. Like, I didn't really have a say at any point. Like no one ever sat me down and goes like, "How do you feel about this?" It was just like, "Yeah,
this is what we do.
Believe in this, or you're going to hell."
Yeah.
So it's like you're like, oh, I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
Because that sounds terrible.
Well, when I was like, I want to say 10 or 11, I went to like a Christian camp, but it was like because of we had like family friends that invited us to go, so we went, and then I did like the sinner's prayer because I was afraid of going to hell. But then like as soon as camp was over, that was like where that experience ended. Like it was like
a Christian camp, right?
Yeah, it was like a Christian camp. So they like scare you about hell.
Oh,
but then it's like the hell thing is actually the thing that kind of like started my transition away from traditional like Christianity.
Yeah, because then you start to see the manipulation that there's like a whole series of things. It took me a really long time to break out of religion. Like really, really, like when I'm saying like probably within the last 5 years, I started to really get it. Like I
spent a lot.
No, like I stopped going to church a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Like how old are you now, by the way?
I'm in my mid-30s.
Okay. So, and then at what time did you stop going?
Oh, probably like mid-20s. Okay. Because I moved to Toronto and then I didn't really like, find a church. I did go to one that was like kind of, it's a church in Oakville, but they would have like satellite locations.
The Meeting House.
Yes, the Meeting House. Yeah. So I would do those.
I've played huge conferences there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like I played like praise and worship guitar for like years.
So at the Oakville location, that's crazy. So I probably saw you play guitar. If it was like, because that wasn't.
I didn't go there. I didn't. There was this. It was like a conference called Fluid.
Oh, okay.
That's what I did there.
Okay. I know. I mean, I haven't been to one of those conferences, but
you know what I'm talking about.
But I used to go to because they would do at the Scotiabank Theater downtown.
Mm-hmm.
They would do they would play the church service on a screen. So I would go to one of those. But after about that, I kind of just spent a lot of time feeling guilty about like maybe not being a practicing religious person and like having doubts and like feeling guilty about all these things.
But what do you think being a practicing religious person means?
Well, I mean, you have to understand I came from an environment where we'd go to church I think our church was on a Saturday night. We go to church Saturday night. Then there's a youth group on Thursdays there would be think like some sort of prayer meeting I go to. Like I was probably in church 4 to 5 times a week, like doing church related things. So like my life was like, I would say equivalent to maybe someone who has been in a cult. Like that's how attached. Like I wasn't growing up. I wasn't allowed to have friends that weren't Christian.
Oh, okay.
So like I had to like, and I went at a certain. I was homeschooled first until grade 7. But when I went to actual school, there was like people I was friends with that had to be like, I can't be your friend because you're not a Christian.
Yeah.
And we were already friends. Like it caused a lot of problems in my life. So
like my parents can't know that we hang out or something like that.
Or
Or would you not hang out with?
I just wouldn't. I probably wouldn't hang out with them. Like, or I don't know. I just didn't have a lot of friends at all. Like, because who would when you're like that weird kid at school?
It's so tough because you are cultured in such a different way.
Yeah, and I would say my parents were definitely more religiously strict than most of the other people at the church. Even I don't know what their problem was, but like
how so? Like, what did that look like?
There was no trust. Like I was constantly accused of smoking cigarettes. Like if I was coming home from somewhere, youth group, I was waiting for a bus and someone's smoking in the bus station and my coat smelled like cigarettes, I'd get interrogated or like, I was going to tell a story of my sister, but maybe I won't expose her on a podcast. That's fine. But there would just be like, there would just be no trust. There was no locks on any doors in the house. There was just like, no, like all my stuff was always like looked through. It was like they were constantly thinking we were doing something bad. And
really,
like, normal teenager things were looked down upon too. Yeah. Just like, I found out about hell when I was like 6 or 7. They showed us this like recording that these miners found
in Russia, right?
Yeah. But imagine being showed that when you're 8 years old.
Yeah, it's fine.
Right before you go to bed. And like the fact that I still remember it is like, obviously it's been a core memory in my life.
Yeah.
So having like, it took me a long time of being like, maybe hell is real. Maybe I am afraid. Like maybe like, you know, like this whole time, like what if, you know? And then like, I think I just hit a moment where I was like, there is so much hypocrisy and there is so much manipulation and so much. Like I actually started researching cults and MLMs a lot, multi-level marketing, because I just get hyperfixations. And then I was like, oh wait, I see all the similarities in both these things in the church I went to. And then I really started to open my mind to like, oh, well, if that church, like this is evil. Like I don't know how to say it any other way. People think whatever they want to think, but at the end of the day, if the whole thing, like if every single sermon, there's a portion put aside to guilting you into giving money to the church past your reasonable limits, you know, or else shame, and there's other like tactics they use, I think that should be a sign. Yeah. Like, and then when you find out, because it's public information, you can go and see how much the pastors are paying themselves for salary.
Yeah, absolutely, you can.
When you find out it's $400,000, and you're kind of like, oh, so that's where my money's going.
Oh,
once I started looking into how much
your pastor made $400,000.
This is so their youth pastor had gone on to start his own
prayer palace.
His youth pastor went on to make his own church after I left, already moved. This guy went on to start his own church with his wife, and they have all these members, and some are my close friends that still go. But so this is probably gonna cause some problems. But they basically like. He got exposed through this post that someone made, and they were just saying how similar to like cults, like a lot of things were happening, how the volunteer work, forcing people to do, like using like there's a VIP seating section of the church. So if you're one of the like members that volunteers, you get to sit in there. And
I think like Elevation did that.
You know Hillsong? Like they basically are a miniature model. Like they're friends with the owners of Hillsong. Like there's a miniature copy of Hillsong. And if you saw the Hillsong documentary, then you know everything I'm talking about.
If they is this church you're talking about in the East End?
And this is in Ottawa.
In Ottawa, okay.
So, but anyways, like, there was a post exposing them, and I started to see all these comments, and I was like, I have watched all these things develop over time. And you're like, this isn't anything I'm interested in. And I kind of realized that, like, it just kind of like snapped something that has been like brewing for so long that I was like, you know what? I don't like any of this. I wish I was never associated to it. Like, I met some of the, like, my, like, lifelong friends, like, at church and stuff like that. But I just, like, I just, like, realized that all of it is, like, at least the one I went to, you know, and a lot of the ones I know people have gone to, there's anyway. So I did the research, and you can look; it's all public information. Him and his wife were each paying themselves $200,000.
Yeah.
And for this church, but at the same time, the majority of that church are university students and above.
Yeah.
And these kids are asked to give more than 10% of their income. Like they would be shamed. Like there was like a leader, like you know what I mean? When there's like leaderboards for who in the
no, absolutely,
is like donating, giving the most amount of money, and they're tracking all that in the back office, and then sitting you down for a conversation because you gave less money this week than you did last week is like
holy,
insane,
really,
dude. Insane. Of course, everything is denied, but I know, like, you know, and that's like, I'm only talking about the stuff that's not illegal. Like,
yeah.
You know
well,
I mean?
and you're only talking about one church, right? Like that's
I'm talking about my personal experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure this is the story. That's why I actually relate a lot to like Chris, because you know he grew up in a strict religious environment, and that's like kind of sort of the reasons we became friends. Like when we first met, like neither of us smoked weed. We were both like these like kids afraid to sin.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, and you're like going back to the cult thing. The I think like the 3 indicators of her cult is being over involved in sex, money, and the practice of excommunication, which is like
they talk about sex so much at church. It's weird. Did you ever notice that? Like they focus, at least the one I went to, they focus on talking about how you should abstain from it, how it's wrong, this and that. But they talked about it so much. You're like, why are you talking about sex so much? Well, I don't even understand why you're talking.
Well, and they talk about it so much that it almost makes it like something irresistible.
And everything is shamed. It's shamed. You're shamed if you do this. If you have sex before marriage, it's a shame. If you do this, shame. You're shamed. If you're gay, shame.
Yeah.
If you're this, shame, shame, shame. Everything is shame. Where the fuck is God's love? When does that kick in? Because I don't see you guys showing that. Because there's God's love, but then if this person comes and says, "Hey, I want to be on the leadership team, but I'm a gay man," where's God's love then? Because you're not going to be showing it.
No, gone.
There's people like that will, like they'll admit to being not admit. I shouldn't say admit. They'll say they'll tell like someone they're suicidal, looking for help at the church, and then all of a sudden they're acted and treated like a leopard because they don't want to even think about or deal with that.
Yeah, well,
it's like really unhealthy. There's no one there to help you because if you're a sinner, you have mental health problems, then you're probably like, well, just pray. Don't go to the doctor, or you don't necessarily need this because you can just pray and Jesus will make everything right. And it's just like,
well, it's almost like, have you seen that movie Spotlight?
I don't think I've seen it.
I think I know what you're talking about. About like the Catholic sex abuse scandal.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it
in Boston.
Yeah.
But one of the people who, I don't know if it's a real person, but like one of the experts talks about because of like the celibacy requirement in Catholicism, it creates a culture of secrecy that like encourages and even protects pedophiles, right? And 100%. So almost in like not in that specific way in evangelicalism, but like it's to a degree where it's like if you're struggling with porn or you're struggling with this or that, it's better to keep it a secret than it is to talk about it.
Oh yeah, I definitely have experienced like someone in that church trying to groom me when I was a kid. I never realized it till I was older. I never told anyone, even in my adult life, just because I don't care. But it was like, I know it happened to other people.
Yeah.
And I know they don't want to talk about it, so that's why I just kind of left it. But there's definitely was predators at that church, 100%, no doubt.
Well, I mean, like,
they were like, you know, sitting in the front row, like.
Oh yeah, like, well, have you heard what happened with the meeting house?
Oh no, oh my goodness, no. Oh no. Another one bites the dust. It's only a matter of time.
It was like 2 years ago. Bruxy, this thing came out that like he had like an 8-year affair early on in the church with some woman who like worked there, and then it like came out.
Classic.
And then he got like taken. So then I think he got arrested. Because like
I gotta look into this.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh,
what
it's
a surprise! Then like people are probably defending him, of course.
Nah, not really. Actually,
okay. Things have changed. I guess.
As far as I know, like the meeting house you're talking about, like multi-site. Like I from what I understand, they're like barely
exist.
I
mean that's a pretty big scandal that would rip apart any church.
Oh yeah, like it's done. But like for me, that was the one that almost was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was like, how many times do I have to see this happen?
That's exactly what it was when I saw that post. There was thousands of comments of different people over times that said what they experienced, and I've seen similar things brewing. Like, it's almost like I was around that person for the, it's like almost the arc of their villain story, if that was their villain story.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? But I think that there was like one of those things where you're like, okay, like everything is hypocrisy. I think growing in the church I grew up in, the pastor got divorced and then married his his like girlfriend before his wife.
Okay. Yeah.
Which isn't really a scandal. It's just divorce is something that they shamed everyone for. Then like people on the worship team, like more than one, came out as lesbian.
Yeah.
Came out as gay. Which is obviously another thing that some of those same people shame people for.
Yes.
Anyways, so like a lot of people, a lot of things happen where you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden these people start going to the church because they're not really appreciated and respected the same. Yeah. And then you're like, exactly. So,
well, yeah, and they
like, first of all, like, you're preaching, the stuff you're preaching again is your people. And also, I just see more hate than love in church. It's really hard for me. Like, people are, like, I'll help you and give you this. And the community takes care of each other. But the system of church is, like, built on manipulation, and it's acquiring money. It's like they don't pay tax to the government. Like, there's so many things that they take to their advantage.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the idea of not paying taxes is because like they perform a service for the community. But then
and churches don't provide a service to the community because when they say they do, they go out and they're preaching to them. They're not going out and giving food to the homeless. They're going out and giving food to the homeless and trying to convert them to Christians. There's no like simple act. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not a pure act.
I can't speak for everyone, of course. But,
well, and that's the thing. That's what I was gonna ask, because I know at least one guy in particular who's like the closest thing to what you imagine a pastor should be.
Yeah,
I know one person who's like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I'm sure you've met people who are
of course
genuine, and like, because one thing I wanted to talk about is I feel like a lot of people missed out on not being able to go to youth group, because there were times where youth group was fun.
Oh, honestly, the best times of my that's the thing. I just didn't realize, like, it's called religious trauma. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't realize how much religious trauma I had until I was older. But all of my core memories come from a church environment. My best friends, the time like that I was friends for like probably 10, 15 years straight that we hung out all the time, were from there. Like I got to play drums for a while in the worship band and like do all these other things that I might not have. Somebody pushed me towards comedy. Like, there is stuff that helps.
And that's what I wanted to say is like youth group is so beautiful because it has it can also go real bad.
Oh yeah,
real bad.
Oh yeah.
But like it's this
really
environment where like as a young person, like if you wanted to play guitar, you could actually do it on a regular basis.
But you're gonna get shamed for masting though.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the catch.
If you screw up with your girlfriend, you'll be off the worship team.
Oh, 100%. If you guys spent a night together and didn't have sex, even, you're off the worship team. Like, it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so, if those are the type of people that would go and reach out to the community, to people that are maybe like drug dealers or drug users or people like that, how long do you think their love would extend? Would it extend only to the part where they're willing to accept God? Or if they're like, I will never accept God, all of a sudden, are you going to stop helping this person? Because it always seems to be the help is a motivation towards turning them. But if you realize we can't become, like, we can't make them Christians. That was like the thing for me, and this could be just my trauma, but I wasn't like, it was basically like I had to try to make my friend Christian or stop being their friend.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was my responsibility as a kid.
I think that you went to a church that was a little bit more hardcore.
It was
than,
also
like, the
my
churches
parents
that I went to.
too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the church was like hardcore too, but this was also at a different time. Also, you know.
Well,
what I mean?
no, I mean it's like what you're talking about is very close to what Jehovah's Witnesses, because like what I've heard is like they will not their entire any relationship that they have with somebody who's not a Jehovah's Witness is missional.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's not missional, then you shouldn't have that relationship.
It's not that the whole church was per se like that. That could have been the essence of the teachings, but for sure my parents were like that. They just assumed like I would be influenced by anyone around me ever, and just never saw the good in me because they were too busy looking for the bad.
Yeah.
And like you know that affects a child mentally when I was a good kid because I was afraid of doing anything wrong. So I actually didn't do anything wrong, and I was constantly accused of doing stuff wrong. All of that is based around religion. Doing normal teenager things, I wasn't able to do. I wasn't able to experience. I wasn't able to share those with my family. If I'm in trouble or I need advice or need help, I couldn't turn to them because I would get shamed or get told I was doing something wrong or punished. So I had to deal with all my own problems since I was a kid.
Do you find, because I feel like I didn't come from a religious home, but I feel like I identify with everything that you just said.
It's just like really anyone with really strict parents would understand, but the majority of that is linked to a religion.
For them, which is
the people I relate to the most are people that grew up in strict Muslim environments, Christian environments, Jehovah's Witness environments, cults.
Yeah,
those are the people that when we sit down and talk, that we relate to the most. Because even a lot of other Christians didn't have strict parents. And like my parents you'll meet them, they're the nicest, coolest people. They're super chill. But like the way I was raised was in such a contained environment, like it makes the rest of my life difficult.
Do you find that did it make you sneaky, or did you just not do the things?
I just didn't do things.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't do things. Like I didn't drink till I was like 21.
Yeah.
Like
okay.
The first time I got drunk, I was in my 20s.
Okay.
Like I didn't smoke weed until I was like 23 or 24. Like I didn't smoke cigarettes ever. Like I didn't go to parties. I lost my virginity super late. Like I didn't do any of the normal things because I was just,
Yeah. Do you have any sort of like belief in God now, or is it like, do you think that there's a version? Well, I guess this is like a two-parter, but do you think that there is a way that Christianity could be practiced where it's not like that? Because this is kind of the thing that I'm wrestling through now for myself.
I guess the hardest part is what the definition of God is, because if it's God in the traditional religious sense, no, I don't think so. Can the universe be considered God? Or do I believe that there is some sort of force or power? Maybe. Like, it's hard. It does feel like there's something out there stronger and bigger than us, but I don't think any of that, like, the way, it's funny because, like, the way my therapist puts it is that everybody can have their own personal God if they want. Like, it could be the universe you believe in. It could be, like, whatever it is. And a lot of people, it's this person that fits into like a religious God. For me, I'm not sure. I'm still on that journey. I just know that I don't believe in religion anymore. I'm actually quite against it. And I think it causes the majority of the world's problems. I think it helps a lot of people. It saved my mom. When she became Christian, the church helped raise me because she was a single mother and I was 2 years old. And like having that community is something that probably was very beneficial. So it's a lot of it, but just the aspect of religion just ruins people and like prevents people from being themselves, and it's just harmful, especially when it's in like a strict environment like that, and there's no like oversight. You're not allowed to question things. If you question something, then they're like look at you different when those things are normal, right? Like why wouldn't you be able to question why God does this or why God does this or why it says this in the Bible? Why do you have to just be quiet about it and don't ask, like, and just accept it as the word of God? But why?
Yeah.
Like where else in life are you not allowed to challenge something besides a cult?
Yeah, because, and again, like I think this shows that I think we came up in kind of different environments because like I went to Tyndale. Have you heard of Tyndale?
Yeah.
The Bible college. So I went there for a year, and then I realized that I wasn't nice enough to be a pastor.
Yeah. Well, then you could have been a youth pastor.
Well, because I fell in love with church because, like you said, like I came from like a pretty not great home background, and the church became the family I never had. Like I had people in church when I had no one else. And so it's tough to say that it was all bad.
Oh, no, and I think it could. I definitely 100% think that it could save people's lives. Like there's something about when people like quit drinking or maybe like go through a life-changing experience, they turn or go to prison, they turn towards religion. They're looking for something, and that community often saves so many people. I get it 100%. There's layers to it too. There's not everyone. Some people just go to church on Sunday every couple weeks, and that's it. That's their relationship with church. I was in the church so much. My life was church.
Yeah.
So like my view is completely different.
No, I mean, yeah.
But,
well, I get it. When you were like at the church that I was going to before, I was playing guitar at like Canadian Christian standards at like a pretty high level. Like the worship pastor from our church was on The Voice, like came up from the US, signed to Sony Music.
Yeah,
and it's awesome. Like when I stopped doing that, it was like, well, if I'm not playing music, like what do I do here? And it was almost like when I stopped, because when I wanted to do comedy, I knew I wanted to do it correctly. And I sold like 8 guitars. I had like 10. I got rid of all of them. Like I stepped down from playing, and it became like, well, it becomes such a part of your identity, and then you kind of don't know who you are. Did you go through that, like when you disconnected yourself?
Yeah, somewhat. Yes, yeah, I did, because I think all my morals and values were not mine in the first place.
Okay,
and like, you know what I mean? You know, when you develop your own beliefs and through time as you age, but like right away I was told what to believe and it never changed. So it's like kind of like the more I stepped away, the more I had to be like, well, like I know I'm a good person. I know like I'm a kind person. I'm nice because I was raised like in this religious environment, but like I enjoy those things about me. But then like, what are the other things that I've made myself feel and made myself be that weren't my choice? So there's a lot of unpacking. It's obviously taking a long time, but I was surprised how long I was stuck in that like mindset of kind of just not thinking about religion at all, and like just not dealing with it. If someone asked, I'd be like, yeah, I guess I'm not religious, but I believe in God. Like that's what I used to say. And now I just like, I don't know what I believe in. Like I honestly just don't know right now at all. Like I just wouldn't necessarily claim to be atheist or agnostic. I just don't know. I just don't care at the moment.
Yeah.
Like I'm on my own personal journey, and if that upsets people, that's fine. Like I'm just so tired of people telling me how to think and feeling what to be afraid of and shamed for this and that, and like, yeah, I think that's just a huge problem with religion. Like I remember going to these summer camps or like these conferences, youth conferences, all male conferences, already problematic, and then they like would basically like pull you into small groups and ask you to confess the things you've done sexually. Like super weird.
Yeah.
And then like the worst offenders they would bring up on stage and get you to speak to all the other men and like give your testimony. And then you start to realize in hindsight how traumatizing it is to shame a bunch of men for masturbation or having sex at an age where people would do that, and then pulling them on stage in front of 300 people to confess their sins. And when none of these are wrong actions.
Yeah,
so
well,
it's like that, like all of that is super fucked.
Like there was the part of it that never made sense to me is like, you're gonna like shame a teenage boy who's flooded with hormones. He has no idea how to
what's going on.
Yeah,
and then you're gonna be all those things you're feeling are wrong because it's actually against God's will for you to feel those things.
Yeah, even though
if it was, then why is it in my nature? Why is it in my DNA? Why is it happening to me naturally?
Yeah, why does every teenager go through this?
Right? And like, I think I had to sit out of sex ed class in school.
No,
which is even like more insane. Yeah. Oh, not even that. I think the worst was I had to sit out when there was like movies playing in school. I would have to sit in the hallway. I would have to ask to be excused, and like people must have just thought it was so weird.
Well, and it's like, it's just not a great advertisement for a religion.
But like, what's gonna happen if I see a movie where there's a little bit of violence, or like I wasn't allowed to watch anything with magic or violence, which is, dude,
I love that.
That's every single 1990s to 2000s kids show has magic or violence.
Yeah.
Name me one that doesn't. Like all that Disney gone. Power Rangers gone.
Harry Potter
gone.
I know there's some cartoon where there's
Lord of the Rings gone. That's not really teenagers.
Well, but that's interesting because I feel like a lot of Christians were really okay with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that was a different timeline for me, but I never was super into that at the time, anyways.
Yeah,
but yeah, and like, you know what I mean. Most things are fantasy, which it falls into magic.
Yes.
But so that was just the general rule. Like there was stuff I was able to watch, of course, but I could watch Field of Dreams, which is magic. If you think about it.
I mean, he's talking to
it's a very old movie.
He's talking to a ghost.
So I didn't watch a lot of TV or movies growing up, actually. I just had like a super sheltered, weird life. I think if my parents raised us now, clock went back, it would have been different.
Yeah.
Like, they're not super involved in the church anymore, but they are like, we went on a family vacation. So
like recently?
Yes, and we never go on family vacations. This is like the second one we've ever gone on. And we're in Costa Rica, and we so cringe, man. We're like having a meal, and then I just see my dad pays, and he gets up from the table, and I see him handing things to a couple people, and we're like, "What are you doing?" And he has like
tracks.
Yeah,
this tracks.
Yeah, he's saying in Spanish, doesn't speak a lick of Spanish, and he's like, and so like as a tip, he would give the track to people, and it was like so cringe, and me and my sister are just like, I actually had to be like, you can't do that right now. Like, we're on vacation. You can't.
My gosh, that's
funny.
You
can't be white colonizers in a Spanish countries trying to convert them to Christianity. Stop. That's cringe. This is how this has happened in the first place. This has already happened once.
That's so funny.
Stop doing this.
Did you find?
Yeah, my parents are white. I have to explain. I have white parents.
Okay,
that's something I haven't explained. I sometimes mention it and I forget to explain. Like I'm mixed, so my birth mom's white, but I was raised by my mom, my stepdad. He married my mom when I was 6.
Okay,
and then my sister is my half sister, also white. So my whole family is white. So on vacation, it's these gringos handing out tracts, and me and my sister very, very scared. Not scared, but just kind of like so cringe, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So your sister's white. Your stepdad, who is your dad?
I call him dad. Yeah, I call him dad, but I mean, for the sake of explaining, he's my stepdad, and then my mom is my full mother.
Yeah. And that's gotta. Did you find it tough to when you were out on your own and you were going to Humber and starting comedy? So you bonded with Chris because he had a Jehovah's Witness background. Did you find it tough to kind of integrate?
Most conflicted because like everyone's partying and drinking and stuff, and I felt compelled to like not do that, and like because I was afraid that it would lead me down the path of drinking and smoking and all this shit, just because I wanted to somehow. Like, the thing is, I don't even know if I was doing it for me. I think I was just doing it for my parents.
Yeah,
and that's like a really weird way to live once you're past. I mean, I think a lot of people experience that. A lot of immigrants probably they experience that with their parents, where even after they live on their own, they feel they have to impress them. But
yeah, I think I had like the opposite experience where like I went to Bible college and like dove into Christianity, but like I wasn't cultured in it, so like I would do like Simpsons quotes and like the other kids would have no idea what I was talking about.
I remember they kept talking. I remember once at church they kept talking about how like they're trying to warn the parents about the Simpsons.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, because I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like the Simpsons was important because the Simpsons were the first like anti-family sitcom. Because before it was like the 80s where like, you know, like
all family.
Family Ties,
Family Matters,
Full House. Like it was all about it was all about the family sitcom, but like all, you know, the dad was the patriarch and, you know, people would get in a little bit of trouble, but it was a respectful family and stuff like that. And then the Simpsons come along and the children talk back. The dad's an alcoholic.
And the mom runs the family.
The mom is the one.
But it's like low key she runs the family. They'll make it super obvious.
Yeah, and then but also like resents it.
Yeah.
Right? And so and they said ass and stuff like that. And of course because it was a cartoon.
That's what it was. It was I remember them being like, this is rebellious. It will make your kids rebellious.
Yes.
And it's like the thing about that is so your kids were like when they're young, everybody accepts that your kid has a rebellious stage when it's young. Maybe like, you know, it happens at a younger age. Then it happens. But when it's the teenager one, for some reason, that's the bad one. That's the one where you got to really reel in your kids. You know?
Yeah,
like,
that was like
it's a part of growing up.
I had some tough rebellious years as a teenager. And then but it always felt like I feel like I have friends who did worse things whose parents love them more.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
and that's just, and that has probably nothing to do except the circumstances of our parents. And I feel like that's also tricky for me to lump what I'm lumping in with religion and my parents. But to me, that's all a byproduct because they were brainwashed by religion and treated me a certain way in that. And I'm sure I did the same. But I found that I never had a rebellious stage.
Yeah.
If I did, it's happening now.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I never really had that growing up. I was just a good kid and didn't really I skateboarded. That was like my thing. I did like I was pretty good skateboarder, so I definitely did some dangerous shit. And that was it. But
That's a good outlet, though.
oh yeah, that was great. And actually, like that was the one good thing. It was like my best friend. Obviously, we met at church, but we were so close that we skateboarded every day.
Yeah.
Every day. So like I wouldn't even change who my friends were growing up. Like I was very happy with that and all of that growing up, but it's just like how much of it affected me mentally that I'm realizing later in life how much I was brainwashed. I don't like how I didn't have like a chance to decide if this is what I believed in. I just had to keep my mouth shut. I was too afraid to say anything. Like literally afraid if I died tomorrow, I would just go to hell because I didn't have time to like pray for forgiveness. Like
Yeah.
it's like a weird way to live. Like, why should we follow an entire lifestyle? Because we're afraid of burning in hell for eternity
But
with no relief. So and therefore, we better be a good person.
Or it's work hard to be a good person, even though Jesus died for all your sins. Like that was the thing.
And also, you could be a perfectly good person, a wonderful person, help people your whole life, don't smoke, drink, do anything, and you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. Not that smoking and drinking all this, anyways, but like you're going straight to hell because you didn't accept Jesus into your heart. So it doesn't matter how good you were, none of those things qualify. That doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you're not a follower. Have fun in hell.
Well, it like I really resonated with what you said earlier. Like it seemed very early on. Like, is the fuel of faith shame?
It is
the thing that keeps me going. Shame. And shouldn't it be
and
like
that's
love?
Like, that's why I started, and I don't even think the people. I genuinely believe the people preaching and the people in charge are really trying their best. I think there is definitely some 100% that are manipulating the system and doing all that. But like even them, like even like in a thing like Jehovah's Witness, I truly believe they believe they're protecting their kids.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you're supposed to honor God. So having a birthday doesn't like honor God. And like I understand that they believe they're doing it, but like all these things you're doing are extremely like restrictive and not healthy, and also probably
and
you know like it can be considered abuse.
Oh, absolutely. And I think like and going even the pastors, you don't even have to see like sometimes I see them as equally as victims too, because it's like you spent your teens growing up in church, you spent your whole life growing up in church,
and you were told to be a pastor.
You were told you become a pastor. That's the only thing you're trained in. It's the only thing you can do. And so it's like so many pastors I hear about who like behind closed doors don't believe in religion, but from the stage, the pulpit, they'll never acknowledge it. They'll never come out, or that they have like a different hell view, right? They'll never.
That's what I almost liked about the meeting house. It was almost the closest to that as I found.
Yeah.
Like when I would go to the things, it was more like they were aware that they were talking to people that weren't like Christians per se.
Yeah, and
like
then,
you know what? I wouldn't have felt super weird about bringing a friend there.
I mean, I think that they were a good model, but again, they fell into the same trap that so many evangelical churches fall into, which is that the reason that people are coming through the door is because of the guy who's speaking on stage, and so the guy who's speaking on stage gets to do whatever he wants.
And then there becomes like at anybody's. It's just the fact that a church is still a business, and it's still going to be run like a business. There's still recruitment involved, which is a very heavy part of church. Like you're literally supposed to go out and minister. And then there's the tithing, which is how you support the church, pay the salaries of the church members, the leaders, pay the bills, do all that. And that comes purely off the backs of the people attending. But there's like that is a necessary requirement. So that means they keep having to bring in more people as people go. And at a certain point, the church is just starting to run like a business.
Yeah, that's what like I kind of appreciated. Like, do you know Francis Chan? Have you heard of Francis Chan?
I'm not sure.
He's like a Christian author, pastor guy, but like he left a giant, crazy mega church and then started this thing where it was like a home church network where basically like as soon as it got bigger than 10 people, then they would split and create another one instead of just making it a giant big church.
I think a perfect example of churches is how they weren't letting homeless people stay in there during the pandemic.
Yeah,
I think that is like the most perfect example I can think of a church. Like that's the place you think they should be able to turn.
Yeah,
it would take them, but they're like,
but then
because that's what Jesus would do.
Well, that's what Jesus would do.
He would definitely turn away.
And then the church people would be like, well, then letting them destroy our property wouldn't be good stewards of what we've been given.
We wouldn't be watching God's temple. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot to a degree that's true, but then it seems hypocritical. So then like this right? I feel like with every issue, there's like a give and take to it that leaves me being like, I don't know.
I'm confused. Yeah, and that's what I am also confused. Like, obviously, no one is perfect, but I think if some people took a step back from church for like a year, they might not go back because they might be like, yeah, because like if you look at all the examples of hypocrisy from the exact people preaching against it, you start to be like, is anyone real? And I don't want to say like people shouldn't go to church and shouldn't do that. If it really helps you, go. But like, I guess coming from someone that didn't get to choose it. If I was in your position, I'd feel a lot better about life. But it's just like I was just in there, and like 18 years of my life, 19 years of my life, I went to church multiple times a week.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Like I would even go to like all my friends were. I would go to other churches' youth groups.
Yeah.
Like that's where my friends are from, which I actually thought was kind of cool. Like it was cool having like a community and stuff, but I didn't miss out on just like regular things, you know, like I didn't go to any high school. I never went to a high school party. I didn't go to prom. I don't know why I didn't go to prom. That was probably more a money thing.
Yeah. But it sticks with you, right? Like all the stuff that you didn't get to do.
Just like, why didn't I get to experience normal teenager things without feeling shame all the time? Like I'm just thinking about the years of my life I felt shame for nothing. For like, I was a good kid.
Yeah.
And like good, like I still am a good person, and I still feel shame for things that doesn't make sense. And you realize it affected my self-esteem later in life. My values and goals, I don't know myself as well because I've always been living for God or someone else. Like that wasn't me, my parents. Like, so, you know, it's like you have to reevaluate all these things, and kind of like that's why it feels like I came out of a cult and didn't realize for a long time. And then now I'm processing all those things. Yeah,
like when I started, after I had my like religious experience, like my original goal was to be on Saturday Night Live. Like that's what I wanted to do. And then I have this religious experience, and then I perceived it as being a selfish endeavor. And it was like doing things in the church was the only way that you could do anything that wasn't like selfish. And then like 20 years later, I'm back on like what I should have been doing the whole time.
What I'm confused about too is kind of like they always talk about how like when you feel before you're a Christian, you feel a hole in your heart or whatever, and then God fills that space or whatever. Like and obviously people are looking for something. They, in your circumstance, like turning to religion is very common.
Yeah,
that people, not exactly the way you did, but a lot of people just turn to religion. Obviously, they're looking for something, and is it the answer is just like that we're not finding the right church or the right leaders? Is it not the right religion? Is it not that we're looking externally instead of internally? I don't know what it is.
Well, it's even more, I don't know what word to use, but like it's harder when you think that it filled that void, and then like 20
and then
years,
you realize it didn't.
And then it didn't. And then you're like, oh.
And that's the thing, is because I guess I was living for like another goal, I guess. And I don't know, like I do understand going and like with the best intentions, people going out and trying to convert other people to Christianity and all that. And because you're genuinely afraid that they're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Like I believe that my parents think I'm going to hell.
Yes.
And even though they won't say that, if it's based around the rules that I know they have, I'm certain they think I'm going to hell. And how hard must that be to be a parent of someone and you are convinced your child's going to hell?
Yeah, and how you would treat them as a result.
Yeah.
like
and it's like, and I think they're like literally worried about us every day, and probably so much anxiety in like my mom's life just because of that one thing.
Yeah,
like she spends so much time worrying about all the bad stuff and all the things that we could be doing instead of just appreciating us for being good kids. And like that's more of an anxiety thing, and I know they're trying now, but it's just like there's been so many years of stuff I kind of have to undo first.
Yeah, well, I think it as a parent, it robbed them because, and I have the same complaint about I haven't talked to my dad in like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And like it's this idea of like, if you could have just appreciated me for who I was rather than what you wanted me to be.
Yeah.
How much different this relationship would have been.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. It's just like they appreciate those things now probably. But,
but it's changed, right? Like you see the people who grew up with having a great relationship with their parents and what those really like when people say as adults, like my dad's my best friend. I'm like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I know. I think that too. Like I would say I'm not like I wouldn't say I'm close with my parents, but I'd say like there's no like animosity when we hang out. If anything, it's like on my part, I just feel like anxious and like kind of like feel reduced back to a 16-year-old when I'm around them. That's probably more of my mental health.
Yeah.
But like that's, but it's like I I do I am kind of jealous of the people that have regular relationships with their family where they can just be themselves.
Yeah.
And like talk about whatever. Like in the past, I've had like, you know, exes and I'll get close to their families. And then you're like, wow, this is like the family dynamic that I craved. Where like everybody's, you can have some drinks, everyone's joking. If I go out and smoke a joint, I'm not going to blow up the whole family event.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I felt like myself around someone else's family where I've never been able to feel that like my family. Because if I was just myself talking about the things I wanted to and whatever, they would be like, shocked, you know.
Yeah, well, it's the difference of like my wife goes home to her parents' house and like that's a second home, right? Whereas you and myself, you go home and it's like you're going and you to see your parents, but you have your guard up, right? And it's like, how can you ever feel truly at peace when you feel like you are on the defensive the whole time that you're there?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's kind of how I feel, and it's like I don't know if it's just like from old stuff. It's so funny because it's so easy. It's easier for me to talk about this on a podcast than in therapy. I don't know how that works. Especially now, I know this is gonna be recorded and heard by a bunch of people. And
I know it's weird.
I'm like, actually, I find it harder to talk about this in therapy, to be honest.
Well, it's weird. Well, that is weird. But maybe it's like because you're talking with somebody who like knows what you're going through.
Usually the rule with me is I just answer most questions honestly if they're asked to me, but I don't volunteer a lot of information. So I don't mind, like, it's my life story and I don't really have anything to hide. Like at this point, if someone's like, oh, Daniel's weird, like I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm way too busy and too old to care about that. But it's just like, you know, I guess I do want to be respectful at the same time, but I feel like this is how legitimately how I feel. Like I don't really have, I haven't even worked through it enough to know how, like where I stand and everything. But that's why it's good to come on stuff like this.
Yeah, well, but it's crazy to think that like you're 10 years plus out of it and you're still wrestling with it.
Yeah, because I spent a lot of that time not thinking about it at all. Like, you know what I mean? Just kind of being like, that was my past life. But there's no, obviously, I started doing therapy.
Yeah.
And you start going through all that stuff.
What made you get into therapy to begin with?
Well, I've just always had a lot of anxiety and like, just felt like a lot of tension and stuff. But then when I saw that post, actually, it started to make me realize like how much I was actually triggered by it and like remembering all that past stuff. And then I started to like remember all the ways I was shamed and like embarrassed publicly. And it just sent like literally like I can't explain it, but I just felt like my brain was just like with memories just flooding in.
Just from the clip with Chris?
No, sorry, from the post that was exposing the youth pastor who went on to own his own church.
Gotcha.
Chris's clips made me want to come on and talk to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was talking about that post blowing up and seeing all that reminded me of all this religious trauma I had. And then actually spoke to my friend who's Jehovah's Witness as well. And he's like relates to me so much.
Yeah.
Like we have such similar stories. So I think like that, realizing that, and then I researched the term and I saw that religious trauma was a thing and that a lot of people carry that. They're stuck in strict religious environments and like it affects your body physically, affects how you are later in life, your self-esteem, all that. So that was when I was like, now I think I figured out the thing. You know what I mean? So I was like, this is something, because like I've always been good at trying to improve myself, but I reached like a limit where I couldn't figure out how to bring it further.
Yeah. Okay.
Self-improvement. So I just went for help. Now it's been like over a year and a half that I've been doing therapy. Super expensive, very helpful.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be able to talk about any of this before. I wouldn't even know that it was something that bothered me. That's the thing, is I don't think I realized how much it affected me.
Yeah.
But then just being away from it for so long, you're like,
well, just the way you talk about it, I can hear the sting in it.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Like I talked to, sadly, I had Dan James on.
Yeah. And
I didn't get the audio.
Oh no.
But one of the things that I felt awful because it was such a great.
Oh no, I
talk.
know that's just the worst when it's such a good talk.
It was such a good talk, and it was like early on, and like I
Right.
want to give it more time, and I'll have him back
Yeah,
on.
I do.
But he was like just talking about like I can't even like process the idea of God independent of Christianity because to me they're still intertwined.
Oh, that's exactly the And so when you asked me that, I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I think what it is that if I got to go into religion on my own, I would have taken my time to see how I feel about it. But it's also just the fact that you're just so wrapped up in it, you don't really think about it till you're out. And I guess just seeing the certain things that happen, some of the hypocrisy, some definitely just full on crimes.
Yeah.
You know, you're just kind of like, it's kind of like your moment when the Bruxy thing happened, and you're like, it's like the breaking moment where you're like, okay, hold on, like,
Yeah, well, and it was like I was really maybe you know him from back in the day. Do you remember Mark Driscoll?
yes,
Like Mars Hill. Like I was
that
like
name is so familiar.
he was from Seattle.
And he wrote like books or hosted a show or something.
Yeah, he wrote like Real Marriage and
Was that Focus on the Family Guy? No,
no,
that's somebody else.
but he would have written for them, sure. And like, yeah, just pastor after pastor going down. You're like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
We're not doing this right. There's something about this that's like lost in translation.
And we're not even talking about the whole like. There's all the Catholic shit. Like,
yeah,
you know,
that's not even our team.
Yeah, that's like we're talking about just straight like more Christianity. Like,
yeah, like the Protestant umbrella.
I mean, I would say that I feel like I grew up in more extremist religious environment. I wouldn't even have said my church was that strict. I think my parents just literally took everything so literally and was so like, our kids are not going to be this way and that way, and had determined that without their intervention we would have become that. And so like I just don't think that like, you know, removing the door from someone's room is a good solution to like you know what I mean?
Yeah, to deprive them of privacy and independence,
and lack of boundaries, just like so it's kind of actually hard. I'm sure like there's a lot of it is about being raised by strict parents, and a lot of it is religion. I don't know where the lines mix and blur and what's what. So, you know, obviously I'm still new to therapy. It's years of therapy it's going to take to like clear all this up. I'm still in the angry stage of a lot of it.
Yeah.
But like that being said, I don't have hatred towards anyone that I've experienced in my past. I have anger towards the system, which seems to be repeated in every church.
Yeah.
Most churches, and the hypocrisy, and just like everybody has their own secrets, and there's no difference inside the church, but we kind of just think everyone is innocent in there. But
well, I think it's more like you think better of it. You would think that they would rise above those things. Right?
But everyone, I think people that go to church are looking for something, or are troubled, or like, I don't know. It's just kind of like there's a certain fakeness towards church, of course. Like,
yeah. Oh,
you know what I mean? It's like, that's not your real personality. You know what I mean? It's like, I have friends that I know how you, I had friends where you know how they want to act and talk, but they're trying to be a Christian.
Yeah.
Like
they're trying
to, you're not like you're not able to actually discover yourself and be your true self, because religion doesn't allow it. Because if you don't, then you're probably backsliding or not following God's word. Because the things that we're naturally do or naturally want to do generally don't follow Christian rule. Sex, before marriage, other kind of intimacy was like, even just like, I feel like they didn't even want you to like kiss your girlfriend when you were a teenager. You know what I mean? Like weird normal life experiences that prepare you for adulthood. You're like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, your sexual urges, don't have sex, but also don't relieve them through masturbation either. Just sit there and let them fester until you become a psychopath.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and the part of me is like, I'm still not like, you know, probably better to wait, right? Like when you're playing with the act that creates life, or it's probably better not to accrue as many partners as possible. Like I still think that way, but there's got to be a happy medium somewhere.
I wonder how many Christians are incels. They think it's voluntary, but
oh yeah, I mean, well, yeah, especially if you don't get married. Well, like, was it in when you went to church, like people got married young?
Oh yeah. Oh, right away. Like right away. Like you date for a year and a half and you're married.
Yeah, like I went to Bible college.
So concerning when you think about it now, and you're like, whoa, these 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds shouldn't be getting married a year after meeting.
Yeah. No,
you haven't even developed your final personality yet.
Yeah, your brain's not even done developing until you're like 25.
The amount of people I can think of that by the age of 25 had a kid in a house, especially because I grew up in Ottawa. Keep in mind, like straight out university, you're getting your government $70,000 a year starting salary.
Yeah.
And then get a house straight away. And then like you're locked in. And then what happens when you realize, oh, actually, my personality is different.
Yeah.
I actually want to be an artist, or I want to be someone that has flexibility. You're just stuck in an unhappy relationship. I don't know why you generally looked upstairs when you did that.
Well, like it's more like it's like I love my wife and my kids. Yes. It's like I wouldn't change that. But the thing but the problem is like my whole thing was I wanted to create the life in the family that I was not able to have.
Yeah.
Right? Like my parents fought a lot, got divorced when I was 8. Totally like it was wild, but at the same time it's like I pointed everything at rebuilding that for myself, and then I'm at, in my early 30s.
And now you're like, oh, there's some stuff I wanted to do.
Well, yeah, like I attained all the things that I thought I wanted, and then, but it's financially, I'm a prisoner to maintain it. I have to keep doing a job I don't like.
That's true. It locks you into a life position. Right?
It locks you into a life position that you can't, right? Because like it's not just like you want to be an artist. Like I'm responsible for my children.
Those were likely the things that do bring you happiness, or you probably wouldn't have spent that much time pursuing it or had that much interest in it.
Oh yeah. It's like, well, I think I told myself for a long time that if like I could have a job I didn't like, but if I could pursue the things that I wanted outside of it, then I would be happy. And for a while that worked until it didn't.
And that's what I was saying about the pandemic. I think everyone got a taste of doing what they wanted to do in the pandemic, or got to think about the things they wanted to do. And a lot of people probably changed careers or wanted to change careers, moved and all this stuff. And then now you're kind of back into the grind again.
Yeah.
Because especially now, even for me, as someone self-employed, does my own thing, I'm like, yo, I'm about 2 more inflation raises away from looking for a job. Like, I don't want to have, like, not actually, but you know what I'm saying? Like, no, I don't know how much longer this can go, where groceries are going to get to a price where it's like, now you can almost just order Uber Eats for the same price per meal. Like, it's
you're in a place as an entrepreneur, essentially, where you're like, every action you take earns you money, but soon it's like, it won't be enough.
But everything costs more money.
Yeah.
And it's only so much more actions I can take. Like, I'm already doing stuff. I'm already working for more than the money I'm making because I'm trying to make the future money. And like auditions are like that. Starting a business is like that. Stand-up is like that.
Yes.
And it's like hitting a point where I'm like, okay, those things need to start giving me a bigger return on investment because inflation is going up. And you can raise your ticket prices a bit. But the average pay you get for a comedy show hasn't necessarily gone up.
No, and that's why
because like inflation affects those businesses as well, so they're gonna keep the pay the same or lower it. Even.
Yeah, well, and I think that you're taking a really good step by like stepping into producing and like owning it for yourself, because that's the only real way it's
and that's why I started producing almost at the beginning of my career, because I just was like, I want to have some control of it, and then it's something I genuinely enjoy.
Yeah,
like to think of a concept of a show, book a venue, have all the risk on your back, sell all the tickets, show up and have a great show.
Yeah,
you're like, that is great. That feels like a really good feeling. It feels like success, and then you have a little bit of control of your money. I don't think as a stand-up comedian, unless you're at the point where you're like your manager's sending you around, do this gig, do this gig, do this gig, and there's like an overflow of gigs, like you're not having consistent like control of your money.
Yeah,
acting is, maybe you'll book a couple of gigs that are huge, great, but it might take you a couple of years of doing random commercials and small roles and not really making money.
Well, and I mean, in Canada, it's not a lot. Like you could still, I think the most I ever saw a commercial make, and it was in like, if you were in, the commercial was going to have like 5 iterations.
Yeah.
And if you were in all 5, you were going to make like 12 Gs. Yeah. Which is, and
that's like a crazy amount for Canada.
That crazy amount for Canada, but that's nowhere. That's one commercial. That's right. You'll be lucky to book that one. That's not,
commercials pay more than even just like a small role on TV. You have to do a lot more work in commercials, but the pay structure is whack.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I lost a lot of the sense of like, I'll put it this way. So at one point in my life, I ruptured my Achilles tendon.
Okay.
I felt pretty immortal before that. I felt like I jumped off really high shit, climbed shit, skateboarded for years, snowboarded, never broke a bone. never done more than like a ligament injury. And then like, yeah, I ruptured my Achilles tendon and I was just like, oh yeah. And that's how I felt like the pandemic came. And they were like, oh, that's another thing. That I never thought that something could stop like everything in the world from happening. And then the writer's strike happened and the acting strike happened. And then you're like, that's like 4 years of bullshit that stopped me from doing my job.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I kind of feel like part of me feels like I'm stalled in my career because I'm not acknowledging that there was like a 3.5 year pause and then now we're rebuilding.
Yeah.
But it's really frustrates me because it's like in these 5 years, I should have done so much more. And like, I still feel like the wheels are a little slow climbing out of it too.
Yeah. It's interesting. The phrase that I hear used and that I use is that it seemed as though with Toronto comedy that the pandemic like reshuffled the deck.
It did. Oh yeah.
Right. Like if you were getting ready to make the move to the States, well, you're back. That's got to wait.
Or 100%.
If you were a touring headliner, well, now you're back to local headliner. If you were a local headliner, well, you're a feature. Or if you had a little heat behind you, well, that's gone.
Because like a lot of the venues changed, the clubs closed, the connections are gone. New comics are running a lot of the shows. A lot of independently produced shows are gone. Like the budgets so we were running our whole business selling Zoom shows to corporates, companies, and selling shows to companies. Their budgets are all bad this year. Yeah, and like everything was just really. I think everyone was the poorest they've been this year specifically. Like it felt like the budgets were gone, inflation was so high, people's rents are crazy now. Like everything was definitely a reshuffle, and the comedy scene is a bit weird right now.
I feel like we've been here a while. Oh wow, I think it's been like an hour and 37 minutes. That's crazy.
Oh wow.
I'm gonna ask you the question I ask like every pro because I've only been at it 2.5 years, so I always like to extract as much knowledge and wisdom as I can. Are you a writer or a write on stage writer?
I'm more of a write on stage, but it's kind of like I need a premise first.
Okay.
So I don't just like walk on stage and start talking. It's kind of like I'll get a premise for a joke, kind of like like doing. It's really annoying when I'm doing groceries and there's couples shopping because they're like holding hands and walking slow and just fucking around like it's a museum. Like I'm trying to get in and out. That will annoy me. I'll think about it for a couple of days. Then I'll kind of like half write an idea. Then I'll go on stage and try it. Okay. Like I don't really have the full structure of my joke yet. I'll go on stage because I find like when I write a full structure of a joke, I make it weird. Or maybe I don't understand that there's the parts that I find funny. Yeah. But then I find that certain points that I find funny might not be what the audience finds funny. It happens so often, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go test this out. Then you go, okay, there's some juice to this. Let's try it, and then I'll kind of write a draft version of it. Okay. Usually my rule is I try a joke at least 3 times before I ditch it, at the very least. Because, like, it could be a bad audience. You could do the joke really good. I've done the joke so well the first time and can never retell it the second time. That's driven me nuts. Yeah, I did a joke for, like, months trying to get it to work a second time, and it never did. I don't know what happened.
But the first time was fire.
So good. I just don't know. I don't know if it was like.
I hate that. I hate when that happens.
I like to half write. Yeah. Kind of have like the premise. I'm also the worst writer because sometimes I just don't have ideas for a while. And then sometimes I get 4 or 5 jokes that I can write in a month. Just depends what happens. Okay. How many times I'm going on stage. The more I'm going on stage, the more I'm like in stand-up mode. But observing the universe from the eyes of a stand-up, and being like, oh, that's a good idea. And then I go on stage and try it. Then I find, usually like a lot of stuff happens. Magic happens when you're on stage too. You know how to get to the punchline. You fix your timing. You're doing all this stuff because the pressure's on. Yeah. I also like to open within my newer joke. Okay. That's something I've always done. I don't advise that for everyone. I would often open with my newest joke. Okay. You have a lot of time to fix your mistakes on the first joke, and like maybe they can forgive you, but it puts so much pressure on you to make that like deliberate that you kind of naturally work a little harder at it. At least for me. Yeah. So, but like now I'm more working on like incident because a lot of my jokes were like 2 minutes long. Yes. And then I would just like write another joke. Now I try to like take one bit and keep extending it. And like I do a bit on therapy. It was originally like 2 minutes long. It's maybe like 4 minutes long now. Yeah. Because I just keep adding different parts. And I want to make my set a little bit more cohesive, Yeah. I like that idea of reinvesting into the stuff that already works. I think that's always like if you don't know what
write about, but you want to be productive,
extend a little
just
bit more.
go try to find some tags.
Plus, like you get tired of, at least for me, I'll get tired of performing the same joke all the time in the same way. So it's like nice to like add to it. Or the thing is, you're walking around and you're like, oh yeah, that kind of goes with this joke. I can add it in. Like I had a joke about, I have 2 different vacation jokes from completely different times.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, they kind of fit together. So I just make it into one joke. It's like,
yeah, you don't. It doesn't.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be true.
I know. I hate. Like I try to. That's the worst part of the movie. I try to tell absolutely the truth.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't usually even exaggerate. I might use exaggerations, but I'm usually telling like the real story, and it really bothers me to like make stuff up.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. I think that's totally personal.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of comedy that does that.
Oh, I have a tough time exaggerating. I'll be like, somebody will be like, oh, you should say it this way. I'm like, oh, yeah, like because I go too true.
Because you're trying to be honest about what was really happened to you.
Yeah.
But there is a way to use exaggeration to amplify a joke for sure. Where everybody knows you're exaggerating, then it's fine.
Yeah, and then they're along for the ride. It's like I saw Tim Dillon not long ago, and he was great. Yeah. And everything he does is at 10.
Where you don't even know if it's true or not.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. It's just like even his take is so extreme. Or he has this one, like I love this one where it like using a good metaphor that extreme. Like he was talking about how Ellen was running like Abu Ghraib behind the scenes or something. Like, such a great exaggeration.
Yo, and the funny thing is though, have you heard about all that
no.
stuff? She's like it was a couple years ago, but she was getting like exposed for just being the worst person.
Yeah, being a terrible,
awful. Like you can't look at her in the eyes. Like you're not allowed to look at her in the eyes if you're like a regular staffer. Like,
crazy,
like crazy stuff where you're like, yeah, that makes sense. It's again the church vibe.
Yeah,
super friendly. This thing, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Driscoll was like a monster behind closed doors. On stage, he was charismatic.
Imagine
and
working for that person where you know how they actually are and you can't tell anyone.
Awful.
And nobody's going to believe you either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been at it a while.
Yes.
Daniel Woodrow, I really want to I want to thank you for coming. I thought this was a really great combo.
This is great. And our first conversation ever.
So thanks for coming and thanks for being so open about it. And your background and stuff. And I hope I see you again sometime at a show or something.
Yeah, you will. Thank you for having me. I appreciate no problem. I told you all my secrets.
There, I have them.
I'm gonna go home and think about how I talk too much.
I've had people come to me after the podcast and be like, is it okay? Did I say too much? They're like agonize over it. It's fine.
I do that a lot in podcasts or interviews because I'll just talk like this and I go, I didn't need to say all that. Especially when you're like, that's on the you know what? The last thing I say, sorry, I know you were doing that.
No, it's fine.
I did a CBC interview recently, or about a year ago, and he actually did research. So they listen to these podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, I forget that these things mean things to other people later in life. You know what I mean? You think it's a moment in time, but someone's like, so in a podcast in 2015, you said, you're like, I'm sorry, what podcast?
Yeah, well, and if it's something from so long ago that you don't remember, I totally get just celebrity who's like, I never said that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
That never happened.
You definitely were like, so in 2015, you said, I was like, oh, I don't like where this is going already. It sounds like I'm getting exposed. That's what that sounds like.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.